Thank you all for joining me this morning. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Katie Norland. I'm the Director of Student Success Services at the College of the Florida Keys. It's a mouthful. We go by CFK. I am also the Director of our Inclusive Post-Secondary Education Program, Project ACCESS. Project ACCESS, let's see, I'll give you all a background. There's a lot of new faces, some returning faces, some people I know. So our students come in. They are in our program for 1 to 2 years, depending on their academic qualifications, what their employment goals are. Our program in year 1 results in a certificate of completion from the institution. All of our students take credit-bearing courses, and in that first year, they earn an industry certification from the National Retail Federation in customer service and sales. So we really focus on a practical, applicable industry certification coming out of that first year. Our second year, again, if the students are academically motivated and want to, we move into one of our, I think right now we have 17 or 18 college credit certificate programs. So there are quite a few different paths that our students can take, again, depending on their employment goals. As I mentioned, all of our courses earn credits. We are really unique right now in that I'm seeing a lot of our students completing Project ACCESS and having more educational goals and actually re-enrolling in the program or in the institution for an associate's degree program. So I don't know if that's a trend or if anybody else has noticed that, but that is just something new for our students that they're wanting to do. We are also a unique program, both at state colleges and inclusive programs, that we do have a residential opportunity for our students to live on campus. We have 100 beds in our residence hall. It is all inclusive, and it is 100% independent. We are very transparent when parents, families, and students come in. We say, we don't have access to the dorms, but we do have this as an option. You need to be able to make ramen, you need to be able to do your laundry, you need to remember to do these things, or mom has to come on the weekend. So that's just a little bit about the program. Eligibility, we love working with VR. I will talk a lot more about our storied relationship with VR as I move along, but these are just some of our requirements. They probably mirror a lot of requirements that you're used to seeing, so I won't go too in-depth. I will say from an FPCTP perspective, we are unique in that we do accept students who do not have an intellectual disability just because of our funding. So our numbers get really confusing. When I'm here and I talk about how many students we have, it's not a real reflection of the full program. So as I mentioned, we're a year 1, year 2 program. This is what year 1 looks like. Again, I will talk a little bit more in depth about year 1 specifically, but our language and our courses, and really this, is how we were able to walk in a line with VR and really support a lot of the students who are coming into our program. It is a very structured ed plan. We have in our program built-in elective opportunities, and that is really for soft skill development. We don't know what a student is going to take from a class until they take it, so if a student wants to take ceramics, they're going to explore some creativity. If they want to take scuba diving, they have to learn a lot of self-regulation. So we've seen a lot of positive benefits from letting students select those electives. And some of them choose to just go straight into their career path and college credit certificate focus with those electives. Again, as I mentioned, year 2 can look like this. We have students choose one of the college credit certificate programs. There are a couple that stack, meaning you take one extra class, you get 2 of the certificates. So it really just depends. What we've seen, the most popular really is hospitality. We have some students who come, they're very motivated by science, so we'll see them take some of the science courses. Fundamentals of professional diving is very practical. My favorite that nobody takes me up on is our marine propulsion, and that is working on boat engines and fiberglassing and welding. And I push that one all the time because I feel like it'd be a very great fit for a lot of students who come to school in the Florida Keys, but no takers yet. So I mentioned our year 1 educational plan. So we really have this set up in a way that both sets the students up for success, but also gives us very clear direction on where the students are going through that year one. We developed this with the help of VR, again, just to have that consistent language. We all have the same goals. We want our students to be employed. They want our students to be employed. We just had to find a way to talk the same to get the students there. So in doing this, one, the students know 100% what they're doing when they come to us. VR knows what they're doing when they come to us. We know what they're doing when they come to us. So this, I will say, has been 100% the biggest help in finding a solid relationship with VR in our location. So this just shows a little bit, we've expanded a lot in our program support. Again, I'm the director. We're a small state college, and so my department oversees a lot of things. So my team does a lot of things, I do a lot of things, and it's a really cool opportunity for our students because I'm also the coordinator for student accessibility services. So we have a lot of advocacy and understanding of accommodations going into classes because they have no choice other than to deal with us. So that's just real quick. So again, we've been working with FCSUA as an FPCTP since 2017. We have quite a few graduates in that time. I think this number is just since we were awarded that FPCTP status. Our program actually started in 2013 as kind of a homegrown in-house program through community education. And now we are at the point where our students are earning credits. They graduate with a college credit certificate program. It's seen a lot of versions since it started. This year we did open an Upper Key Center in Key Largo, and Project ACCESS was one of the first programs to be adopted up there. So now we've kind of expanded where we can offer. Again, because before we were only in Key West, but we're serving a county that's 110 miles long, so it was challenging. Let's see, so starting to talk a little bit more about career readiness. Our students do take a minimum of 2 career-focused courses, and so again, this is building up to them taking the industry certification in customer service and sales. All of our student life skills courses focus on things that they can take with them as they graduate and move through the college. So we work on resumes, as I'm sure a lot of you do, cover letters, we do mock interviews. Our students have to, well, we require them to go to a lot of workshops. Really anything that we offer through Student Success Services, the Career Center, or Learning Resource Center, our students participate in. Because of our size and some limitations, our work experience is on campus. For some students, that'll be work study, and for some, it's a volunteer experience that we try and tie to their interests. So if we have a student interested in hospitality, they'll help us out in the pool so they can start to, understand some of the recreation sides of what we have happen there. One thing that we are currently working on with our VR counselors is placing students in off-campus internships, but having VR help support those internships as kind of their on-the-job training. So that's something that we're hoping to implement for some second-year students this year in the Upper Keys Center. Again, our students attend regular meetings with our coordinators. So I guess this will be the part where I talk a little bit about our history with VR. When I came on in this position almost 6 years ago now, we had a really challenging time working with our VR counselors that were local. Horace has been with me the whole way, and what we really had to do was put our foot down and advocate for our students. There's, as many of you I'm sure have experienced, there's a lot of misunderstanding in the programs that we're offering and the students that we're offering them to. So again, the most important thing that we were able to do was find that consistency in language because our goals are the same. We just do them different. So That was the biggest thing for us. And one of the things that we really started doing was have, with our local office, again, this is something that we just started locally, and I hope for our out-of-county and even out-of-state students we can start to roll this out. We, on our end, have FERPA. On their end, it's a form. I don't remember what they call it, but so we have the students sign the FERPA for our counselors, and is it an authorization form? I don't know the term. Yeah. So they sign the VR form. So what they're doing is giving us permission to talk directly to the VR counselor and the VR counselor permission to talk directly to us. We've essentially cut out the middleman. Now, at first I was like, we're doing a lot of work for these students, but it really helps for consistency of language and understanding of what the student is actually doing. We have students come in and say, I'm taking classes. That's what they understand. That's what they know. Or I'm interested in the pool. I'm interested in this. That doesn't translate to guest services, the language that we use and that we know is consistent. So what we started doing is we have monthly check-in meetings where we can ask VR what they need. We know what our counselors are looking for. They can ask us how our students are doing, and we can tell them. We can have really open conversations on what's going on both ends. If VR needs a form signed, we can do that. We see our students every day. They see their students when we need to. So this, I will say, aside from having this set up ed plan, was the biggest thing that helped really put us in a good position to be successful with our VR counselors. This also allows us to double up on interventions if we have a student who's struggling, or we have a student who came in interested in business and then saw the dive lagoon and, oh my gosh, now they want to work on a dive boat. We have classes for that. So then we can collaborate on making that change for the student and helping the student understand what they're asking for and what their goal is, because ultimately they want to work on a dive boat, we're cool with that, but they have to work on the dive boat when they graduate. So it has really helped having that consistency. The other thing that we put together was a cost estimate, and that has helped our counselors a lot. We can never know to a science how much it's going to be, but we know that our per credit is $109.22. So how hard is it to put it in an Excel spreadsheet and say, this elective is 1 to 4 credits. It is estimated at $109.22 or 4 something, right? We know approximately what housing is going to be because, again, we have housing. We know approximately what a meal plan will be. So having these estimates going in to the relationship with both the student and VR has helped us. And none of our numbers are a secret. It's just putting them together in one place. So we have this that we can send to a VR counselor right when a student reaches out to them, and they know the direction they're going. I mentioned already, we are starting to work a lot more with VR on placements, coaching, and referrals, because that's what they're good at, right? They're a lot better at that than we are. They have a lot more relationships in the community that we do, and a lot different relationships in the community that we do. Let's see. Did I miss anything there? Any questions kind of how we got to that point? Yeah. The first, so we ask our students that they at least pursue to be a VR client because it's a benefit for us in a straightforward working relationship, but also a benefit for the students, both for the financial resources, but also the resources when they graduate. Because our relationship, we keep in touch with them, but our relationship kind of ends once we give them a hug after graduation, like, okay, now you guys go. And we're, again, unique. Key West and Key Largo is kind of a melting pot of people, so we are seeing more students coming from other counties in Florida and other areas. So we want to know that they're going to go home and have that support, because we're not going to be in West Palm Beach. So that is something that I've got Monroe County down. That took a solid couple of years. So now our goal really, and it is trying to really explain to VR, this is what we do. I've gotten very lucky that my out-of-county student counselors are not, they don't question. I had a lot more challenge, ironically, with my Monroe County counselors at first. And so everybody has their horror stories, but it was challenging. So reframing that and finding a model. So what we do when we have a student who comes from out of county is, do you want to connect us with your counselor? Do you want us? We give them the option. It's not mandatory for us to deal directly with their counselors. We can't make them do that. We've just found that they like it. They don't have to figure out what a SAR report is. They don't have to figure out how to log into my CFK to get their bill. They don't have to figure out a lot of things. And so it makes their life a lot easier, but ultimately it's so much easier for us because we'd be getting that information for both sides anyway. So this just makes it a lot more straightforward. So my goal really is to do that. It also becomes challenging because our students in Monroe County have the same counselors. So we have those waivers for those people because we still have to remember FERPA, working in higher education. So if we don't have the ability to talk to somebody, we can't. So we still send the ed plan. We still send the cost estimates. We talk to the counselor about what we do in Monroe County, and it's up to them and the client what they want to do. But it is our goal to do that because, let's be honest, it's like a half an hour a month, and most of the time it's like 8 minutes. You guys good? You guys good? It started as 45 minutes or an hour, and now we check in, we say hi, we exchange pleasantries. How are your students? How are your students? All right, talk to you next month. So it really has gone from this really in-depth process to, all right, see ya. So that's good, but it is our goal to expand a little bit more. I would say consistently about more than half. It varies from cohort to cohort, but about half, because we really push that relationship. Any other questions I can answer? Yep, so I brought a printout of that first year ed plan if anybody wants a copy of it. They are what we call academically specialized courses at the college in that they were developed for this program. However, any student can enroll in them with permission from my office. We don't want them to be filler classes, and we don't want students to come in and be distractions for the students in Project ACCESS who really need these classes, they need these skills. But certainly if I have a student who comes in and says, I need a little bit more help than SLS 1101 is giving me, can I enroll in these? Absolutely. So, how often that happens really varies on the semester, but really anybody can enroll. So, best laid plans, right? One of the VR counselors that we work with very closely and have for the past couple of years was going to be here, and she was going to kind of give that VR perspective. Unfortunately, when I called her to talk about this, she has decided to go elsewhere in Monroe County, so I will be halfway back at square one, but we do have Horace Brown is here, everybody else is here. If anybody has any question from the VR perspective on, maybe establishing some of these relationships, how to go about it, how often to call Horace if you have problems, when to call Horace if you have problems, anything like that. Did you have anything that you wanted to say from the VR perspective?
Yes.
They're recording it, so that's why we're using the microphone.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to share a little bit from our VR perspective. So when it comes to the relationships, if you're starting a program or you have an existing program and you're interested, if the student is interested in receiving services from VR, we have a presentation that will be tomorrow from Jesse and Peter Shepis in the room tomorrow. So please feel free to sit in on that session. They'll go more in depth, but I'm going to give you a brief overview. we would like for all students, and I do mean all students who are participating, if they could, apply for VR services, right? It is an eligibility program. However, with the proper documentation, of course, with the disability diagnosis, and we have that paperwork, we can make them, determine them eligible for VR services. Now, as far as the relationship with the schools, it's very, very important that you start early, getting the counselor involved with this process. As Katie has mentioned earlier, I think it's very important initially to have those one-on-one sessions. Consistency is a key. As we all know, every organization goes through turnover. So in the event, if a counselor leaves, a new counselor is assigned and there's no communication with the school, there could be a delay in services. So please make sure if you come up with some type of strategy, even if it's not monthly, if it's quarterly, have some type of strategy in which you can communicate with your counselor, VR counselors. The forms she's referring to, of course, we have to sign waivers to give us consent to share information with the school and vice versa, so that we're covered on both ends, but also include the student in those sessions so they know what's going on. We know how, even with traditional students, they know they're attending classes, they know what their major is, and that's it. So we have to make sure that we're setting a platform for them to understand what exactly they're doing, making sure that they have the accommodations that they need while they're attending school, and asking those questions, because generally you're not going to know what they are initially. So having these sessions and having this platform to guide them through this process will be very beneficial to you, to the student, as well as your programs. So do you guys have, go ahead, you have a question?
You mentioned the consent form. Is it the same across all of the counties through the VR, or is it a different form by county?
So all of our forms are standard across the board throughout the counties, each state, each office. We have a total of 52 offices across the state. I just found that out within VR. So we have multiple offices. So all of our forms are standardized. Initially, and one thing I do want to stress too also with that is informed choice, and they'll talk about this tomorrow. We give the students the autonomy to make decisions on their cases. As long as they're realistic, we're guiding them through this process. So we do not dictate what happens with the case. We're just there to help coach them through these courses and the things that they need so that they can be successful. Are there any other questions?
I just want to, I don't need that. Everybody can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm from Project ACCESS, Robert Morgan Technical College, and we are in Dade County, so we have a ton of offices. So one thing that makes it easier for us, for when our students apply for Project ACCESS, is we ask them to become VR clients, the students. A lot of them, and that's a good
And then, and to your point too, as Katie has mentioned as well, I like to use that word, it's a warm handoff between both. And I think both the schools and VR plays a part in part one and part two. Initially, of course, if the student is going to school and they complete their classes, they receive their accommodations. Part two is coming through VR. So now we're working on that employment aspect. We've received the credentials, now let's put them to work. So let's see how we can help them and structure a plan for them so that they can be successful post school, okay? So that's our goal. So I don't want you to just think of it as, okay, you're just going to school, you're obtaining these credentials, but after that, there's another step. You know, we're not just leaving them high and dry. We want to make sure that they have those employability skills too as well. So if the focus is mock interviews, if it's resume writing, these are all the things that we're going to add to that resume and continue to build their portfolio so that they can obtain employment. Are there any other questions?
What are the types of VR services that you provide to students, and do pre-employment transition services get into that at all?
Yes. Ooh, that's a big question. It's a loaded question because it's.
We're going to cover that tomorrow too in the presentation, the different services and pre-eds, and we'll go over that in more detail.
Yes, Jesse is our pre-employment transition service program administrator. That's a mouthful too. But yes, he'll cover that tomorrow's session. Just to give you a quick overview, we do cover a multitude of things, primarily employment-related activities. So job training, job skills training, rehab technology. That's another avenue that we do cover as well. But just keep those things in mind. Of course, as you know, with tuition assistance, as long as it's geared towards employment, those are some of the things that we do cover, but they'll go in more detail. I don't want to spoil their presentation for tomorrow, but please make sure you're in attendance for his session. Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm a VR counselor in Pinellas County, and I've had this question from one of my schools, and I've asked my supervisor, but hasn't gotten back to me, but I'm sure you'll know. Okay, they're asking if, so they have students that come from other counties, but they're staying on campus, housing. Do they have to start the VR process from their home county, where they live permanently, or can they start in Pinellas County because they're temporarily?
Well, it depends. It depends on how you define it. If they are already a student and now they're transferring their case to this county,
No, they're not a student.
they're not a student yet, so they'll use their home county to apply for VR services, and then, of course, upon acceptance into the program, wanting it transferred to that county.
We're just not sure. I think the supervisor's checking with people of her that she's checking.
Okay. So in this, for instance, in this particular situation, so if you have a student who's in another county and the school, let's say, is located, I'm just throwing names out there. Say the school is in Miami and the student is located in Tampa, okay? But want to go to school in Miami. In that case, depending on the type of program that they have, so for housing, I know housing has been a big issue for us, but believe me, we're working on it. We have new policy revisions that's going to address all of this too as well. But as I mentioned before, with informed choice, every case is individualized. So what works for one person may not work for every single case. So keep that in mind. So in this particular case, it would be subjective to what the situation is to determine whether housing is appropriate in this situation. So if the student is going out of town and it's a program that is dedicated to, for example, the Keys, where you gain those independent living skills on campus, we see the benefits of it being on campus, then there is some leniency with having that being covered through VR because they're out of town, and we see the benefit of it because it doesn't only help the individual, but they're gaining skills as well, independent living skills on campus as well, in addition to the housing.
You're just wondering where their case should start. If they've been, say, accepted into their school program, but they aren't with VR, then should they start
I would recommend doing it in the county that they're going to be housed in, because they're going to know about more local resources that are available there. Now, granted, if you want to get the process started sooner, of course, opening the case in their hometown would be beneficial too as well. But as far as once they relocate, I would go ahead and get that case transferred over. At least get the initial steps out of the way, because as we know, it takes a while to get eligibility determination and to create an IPE. Now, if you can, I would suggest once they're in, after the eligibility has been determined and they, it's about time for the IPE, I would go ahead and request that transfer. Because generally, if you go ahead and transfer it, that next counselor can then start develop a fresh IPE, not IEP, IPE, so that the services can be catered toward that local location that they're going to be in. Are there any other questions? All right.
And I will say, I kind of glossed over housing because that's a trigger. But what we found is finding the consistency in languages, or in our individual languages. So what I did, because we do have housing and we do have students who want to come to us from out of county, is I went to our college catalog and pulled the course descriptions, and then I can hand that off to the counselors and say, this is how these courses are going to directly relate to the students having support to live in our dorms, and what we will be teaching them and how we will reinforce those skills in meetings, classes, and then they go home to the dorms and practice that. But it's a little bit more controlled from our end. So that helped as well. We have the course descriptions. We know how the courses are set up and how it will translate to independent living, social, and employment skills. It's really, again, I cannot say it enough, the consistency of language, because they speak a different language than us, we speak a different language than them, but there are a lot of words that overlap, and it's just finding those.
One other thing I want to mention too as well, when you're having these meetings, so if you decide, if you see a new student that's about to attend a school, go ahead and schedule that meeting. Have an outline ready for your counselor. So as she mentioned with the communication, outline what your program is about, outline some of the things that you may think. Now, keep in mind that you may think, but it's about the student, but keep in mind of accommodations that they may need while they're attending the school. So you want to outline all of these things initially in that first conversation that you have with the counselor. Hi, my name is Horace Brown. We have this student that's about to attend our school. Here's a list of our program objectives, you know, how many course hours we have, how many we recommend as far as course hours, because we do understand too that 12 isn't the standard for everyone, especially working with this population. So keep in mind of all of those things. You have to look at it from a holistic experience, okay, standpoint, so that everything is out in front and it's outlined so that the student knows and the VR counselor is more accepting, because you will, I know it's just like any program, you'll get pushback. But the way that IPSE is growing, inclusive post-secondary education is growing, we're getting more and more buy-in, and we're having more and more enthused counselors that are coming aboard too, that are willing to listen, because now they say, okay, this isn't a small program, this is growing. This is on a more statewide scale, and you'll receive more buy-in from those VR counselors and say, okay, this will work. This is something we can do on our end. You guys have put out this outline for us with the accommodations that need to be met, and that's part of what VR will help you decide too as well. So even if you don't know what those accommodations are, their experience can come into play to help you determine, okay, I think our student will need these types of accommodations while attending your program, all right? And looking at all aspects, not just going to school. Like she said, independent living. If they're staying on campus, how are they getting to and from classes? You know, what's their transportation route? You know, how are they cooking or feeding themselves every day? Are they buying things from the store? Financial literacy, all of that plays a part into it. Independent living. So you have to keep all of those things in mind when you're talking to your VR counselors, because that's what they're going to look at, not just them obtaining the credentials from your school. Okay.
How
school perspective, getting to understand the VR process is really important. We can get frustrated and not understand the bureaucracy that they have to go through, the same way they don't understand the bureaucracy that we have to go through. So communication is truly key, and understanding your program as well. We ran into some issues at one point where our students' ultimate goal, I keep going back to diving, but I keep thinking of the students, so we'll do that, was working on a dive boat. But year one focuses on all of our transition skills. So there was question, well, why, if this is the goal, are we doing this? So we came to an agreement that year one's IPE goal would be customer service and sales. And then if the student, again, is academically motivated and they need that additional training and education to back up their career goals, then we go in and we talk about amendments to the IPE. That way, VR's language is clear, ours is clear, we know our product, they know their product, and then it comes to this intersection. So again, from my experience, just really understanding and finding that common ground is paramount. And the transparency of information. We know what we can share, and we know how we can find ways to share what we can't. So being as transparent and upfront at first as possible really helps the student be successful and us be successful, both of us.
Are there any other questions?
If there aren't any other questions, thank you everybody for joining us today. Take these few extra minutes to answer emails. I know mine is pinging. So, but if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to talk about how it really, in my mind, my relationship with VR was really reformed because it was very challenging in the beginning. And then if you do want, I have printouts of that year one. I'm happy to give it to you or email, whatever.
And I'm just pubbing VR's presentation for tomorrow. It's at 8 a.m. Do you have the room number by chance? Okay. H. So it'll be in the, I think that's on the other side, the opposite side of the ballroom. So tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, we'll have our session, okay? And you'll learn more in depth about VR. Thank you all.